his name, I don't recall.
Sarah.
Yeah, but now they have a lawnmower down at the very bottom, cutting the very section and not, so I don't know if that's related or not, but it happened.
Wow, okay.
I know,
It's some sort of feedback.
Feedback.
Hey, Kat.
Can you turn that off? Wow, it's.
hello, 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 hello.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello?
Thank you. Is it still happening?
No.
No, I think it's gone.
That was pretty crazy.
Are y'all gonna allow
Okay.
public comment?
Sure.
Actually,
Oh, no?
Not
No
an
public?
official, just.
Oh, that's right, we're just having a meeting.
Just talking about, yeah.
Excuse me,
about
I
all
forgot
stuff.
a turn.
So
Yeah.
are y'all adopting rules? So the comments I had were just on the rules. I've written a whole bunch of these, and I think some of my comments may help y'all.
If you want to submit them, email them or send them to Hannah here.
Yes.
And they, since this is a work session, they won't be voting on anything tonight. That would come up, presumably come up at a future zoning board meeting. But so, yeah, if you have something to want to contribute, give a copy over to Hannah and we'll make sure it gets to the members of, however they want to consider it.
So Shannon just texted, she's 3 minutes out.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, we'll hold off for now.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was working down there, and that was the one day that it poured rain.
Oh, that's, okay.
I mean, it came down, and he still, that doesn't affect Caterpillar
What's your phone
machinery.
number, so I have it?
Knocked it out,
They can,
whatever it was. But I'm just inquiring, I guess, was that part of the Washington Avenue project, or was that a separate deal, or that might have even been somebody that owned one of the owners of the properties?
could be, I really don't know.
Yeah, I'm
I
curious.
thought they're through on the east side of Washington, now they're transitioning to the west side.
Right, we're on the west side.
Okay. I don't,
No, yeah, I was,
I don't, actually do not know. Hey, Mike.
hey, Wade.
Howdy, howdy, nice to see you again as always.
Good evening.
Whatever.
Shannon's almost here.
Yeah, okay. Give her a minute.
I'm not the last one.
Yay.
I won. My savior Shannon will be right.
I did the, yeah.
Yeah, so you did the first one, Shannon did the second two, or three maybe, and then the last two were Wade's.
Okay, and then you did this one and provided these. Okay, okay.
Yeah, yep. Yep.
Have broken ourselves out into different responsibilities formally.
Yes, the first one's Nick.
Yeah, what, email it to the chairman?
Chairman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I knew who they were.
Yes,
So,
we vote on it.
what's the bylaws,
every year,
Blue,
well,
and then
actually-
Franklin,
It's July.
In July.
that's Shannon's.
July meeting.
Sorry, the last two were Wade's.
We got it.
Yeah, so happy you made it.
Done.
So happy you made it. I got behind Mike, you know, and I was in.
He just needs to say it.
I'm
I'm
not
the
the
last
Oh,
so he
Yes.
was excited.
Thank you.
So, do we have anything to do with traffic? Or we can
Just
Yeah.
traffic situation.
Didn't say anything, but I was mostly waiting to pull out of my street onto Government to get here.
All right.
Look at the, go to, Y'all have traffic preemption devices like fire truck.
Get you some sirens for the top of your car, like flashing light. Official business.
Pizza signs.
Okay, well, I guess we're here as a work session go over possible bylaws for the zoning adjustment board. And Shannon provided a bunch from different cities and a template. Nick, you did a chat GPT thing.
Yep.
I might have to.
And then I sent you all the sections from the UDC that identifies what the ZAB's authorities and powers are, and also just for comparison, the historic commission bylaws, just so you know how they formatted them. So, you wanna, how would?
I sort of had an idea.
Okay.
I was thinking we only have 60 minutes. We could do like a 20-20-20 type situation. I think those that submitted stuff, we can each present our own documents. And then we can just start eliminating the obvious, maybe circle the things we like. I was gonna throw out some things, I think, like the planning commission, just consideration points. Do we wanna stick with 5? Do we wanna do 1 from each ward? And then have an at-large, because we need to have a tie break, so we need to stay an odd number. I didn't see, we talked about it, our board positions have to be voted on annually, but I think we need to specify that it's a period of July 1 to June 30.
Right.
Is usually all
Not
the
the calendar
appointments.
year, right.
And I think what we're doing here, just to be clear, is also going to be sent to the Board of Aldermen for final approval. Would that be how this works, Wade?
I was looking, I did not see anything in the UDC about bylaws needing to get board approval. I mean, there's certainly no harm in doing it and or, I don't know if it had to be approved by them, but give it to them for information purposes.
I would almost
'Cause I
like
mean,
them to just know.
yeah, I think it'd be good to know that
Mhm.
this is how the zoning board operates by.
That's kind of my thought. We need to address an absentee policy and the specifics for replacement, how we go about that. Any conflicts or recusals that need to happen, we probably need to drill down more on those points.
Yeah, that was that, I forget which, I guess it's the template you had. I thought that was a good section in there about to expand conflicts of interest and such.
I have voting and approval criteria be a little more specific. This is just something I'd like to see for our future board's growth, is some kind of a minimum standards. A lot of different municipalities that we're trying to elevate our bylaws and make us more like some of these other cities that are well-known. They often have a very minimum CEU opportunity. It's not much for the municipality. A lot of times it's free training, and I know we need to start somewhere with our boards, kind of raising the minimum standards, and this helps keep everybody current in some way as a baseline. That was just an idea. And then I think when I go back to when I joined the board, there was no orientation, and I think that would really go a long way, so maybe that's something we can talk about too. And those were my key things, besides what's on these documents. Other than that, I do want to recognize Joe Jewell in the room. He's done this many times for organizations, and he's asked if he could speak at some point for a few minutes, so I just wanted to offer that up.
Well, I know we just quickly mentioned work session is, is there a speaking moment or not speaking moment? Like, how does it become a formal meeting if there's a
Yeah.
Only if we make decisions, only if y'all make decisions,
Okay.
it's a day.
It's just more
Okay, so
advice
I mean,
yeah.
outside of the board.
If it's the board's wish to let
Okay,
Jewel
yeah.
talk, say at the end of it, if we have time, yeah, I mean, that's up to y'all.
Okay. And my earlier comment of, no, you're not speaking, wasn't
Oh.
anything to you. No. It was, as I just alluded to Wade, I think this is just a work session where we talk about stuff. I don't think we.
Yeah, I think
let
that's, he
public
just has
talk.
some
Yeah, yeah.
things he'd like to
Not
throw
against it.
I'm
out.
not offended at all. And my comments, I think, would be a positive benefit for y'all. You know, because like I said, I've written these, at least 40 of them, and I've filed with the Secretary of State administrative changes to rules hundreds of times.
Yeah, so I thought he'd be a really good resource for us.
Okay.
All right.
Can I ask a basic, working backwards, where did our existing bylaws come from? Did we,
There are now.
Here they are.
well, I call this, I guess it's from what you said. I guess that's kind of like the way we operate now.
That is out of the UDC. That's just the basics of what the zoning board, what kind of authority and responsibilities you have, where the power comes from. I put that in really to like what you have to do, also what your limitations are. So, what you have to operate within.
Okay, yeah.
So is, HPC the only board that has?
Planning Commission has something.
They
to
do.
with these.
I meant to print them out and
Well, the historic preservation is a little more, it's similar in terms of that it's a defined area of what you all look at.
yeah.
So it's, the bylaws is not part of wouldn't be part of the UDC, it's just a separate document that we.
How we need to put code of conduct, ethics stuff. It just, they're very varied. Is that the way to say it?
Before the meeting can start, whatever we want to.
Every time she does it.
No.
So my three documents, I went to the Google and asked to give examples of some leading cities, sort of similar to our size in the country, that are regaled for their zoning boards, and they have very good standards in some of their criterias for being a board member. The next one, what good zoning bylaws, that is a comprehensive thing. It kind of mirrors it, but it gives you a little more detail on some examples of what goes into making good, what goes into making good bylaws. And then my last document, like Nick, I just had it give me a collective of best practices. That's the one with the blue bylaws title. And give it just a rough format so we can see what we do and don't like, but just a jumping off point. It's not anything more than that. So if you want to talk about your documents.
Yeah, so what I did was, very similar. So ChatGPT, you can upload stuff. So I said, hey, here's a copy of the UDC that pertains to the zoning board. Here's a copy, and what I went and found, it was Bay City, Michigan. Just did a quick search of bylaws that existed, and they're about 32,000 people, so they're larger than us, but waterfront, nice quaint downtown area. It just seemed like a close of a match I could find with some bylaw stuff. So uploaded those and said, adjust these to be similar to, or to be, Ocean Springs Zoning Adjustment Board, knowing these responsibilities. So that's kind of how I got it to come up, And now that, we've seen, and the reason I asked about Planning Commission bylaws is just from a city standpoint, do we want to follow this format? So formatting is similar across boards. And that's why I asked about Planning Commission, if they had bylaws, and was it formatted similar to this, and did we need to stick kind of?
There's a lot of differences
something
from what I
like this.
remember. There's some things that I like about the Ocean Springs Historic Preservation, where they talk about, let's see, they were really good at their attendance and vacancy specifics on how many you missed, plus the process for replacement.
You got it.
Get to it.
Just like, ChatGPT formatted mine and yours very similar, just from a section or article.
Yeah.
Yours is name and authority, mine's authority, HBC is name. So if we want Article 1 to be name, you come up with something. Article 2, purpose. an Article 3 powers, Article 4 membership, 5 officers.
Well, I guess let's talk about our officers, and I know just a couple terms on the board. Vice chair sometimes does some things, but it's almost always the chair. But our secretary position, I don't even know who our secretary position is. And is that something that is really a thing today?
I think it's me, but I'm not sure. But I asked about it, they said, there's no,
No record.
no.
You were supposed to make that secretary. Write that down.
It's almost like the backup vice chair.
It is, right now. That's basically the only role, is if the chair and vice are not here, is really the only thing that the secretary is doing. You're not keeping minutes, you're not preparing anything. I don't know how we want to address that, but, do we
Well,
want
I
to
mean,
keep
obviously, we know Nick is the chair, you're the vice chairman, and then he's the secretary, but I know that you will be maybe leaving us, so do we need to?
Well, my term ends in June,
Okay,
so there's definitely going to be a vacancy on the board.
okay.
Yeah.
You have to
ultimately, I
break
could
dates
just
of all.
For
You
now.
and me are on the same
I
schedule,
thought we were, yeah.
so there'll be,
Yeah,
John,
John, sending out
whatever he
those
wants to
emails
do.
pretty
Came
soon.
on at the same time.
so.
But I can work on establishing, a document that states that to begin with, chairman, vice chair, secretary. And just at least start that, at least for the, purposes
We
of.
dropped
Do we
six.
see
officers.
a reason to add anything more to the secretary's duties? Like,
Perks.
Parking.
Marking,
I was thinking that the secretary would be actually in charge of reviewing.
that's what I was
minutes.
wondering.
I think,
There's-
just kind of, their duty is to review the minutes
Typos,
before the
if
meeting,
somebody's
or
name was left
typos,
off.
make sure that it's generally.
Do you
that's
want
what they're doing.
to beef your position? I mean, we're gonna have to re-vote on this come July, after the July 1 date anyway, because it'd be a new board and that would start the new calendar, because we operate July 1, June 30, but, I mean, I definitely want to start to grow this board, I think, a little more.
And I do the minutes, I'm really easy to work with,
Yeah,
so
I
if
mean,
you
I'm-
just read over it, you just want me to make little edits, you could just call me, we could do it over phone or email,
Fine
however,
with me.
but.
As long as there's some, word written where I know what the standard is,
Right.
I mean,
Like, if we would be deadline driven, like, I would imagine reviews the minutes so many days prior. It would need to probably be before it got posted publicly on the,
So maybe like 10 days before I publish the agenda with
let's
the.
think about that. Mhm.
Okay.
Does that sound like a
10
secretary?
days before. Okay.
Um,
I can do that. So just a heads up, we do have two we have to review because there were edits in the last two from the last time we had a meeting. So I just need you to review and make sure that my corrections were
review the notes. or-
the minutes,
The
the minutes. So it's like a synopsis of the meeting. So every agenda item, we just do like a synopsis of
Right.
what the motion was, what
Sure.
what the details were, if anyone spoke. And then, just make
And
sure.
I'm
you have all
reviewing
the
that
details.
synopsis for accuracy or?
Correct, make sure that I just,
Yeah.
recorded it correctly.
Okay.
And we can always loop you guys in maybe for the first two, just for accuracy.
And I would,
as
I
a
guess,
chair.
yeah, suggest, if, secretary, everything's live streamed, everything's online, you could go back and kind of watch
Yeah.
and just kind of help. Because
Yeah, just
I know
look
sometimes
for some
a month,
obvious
2 months
areas.
apart,
If you wait
yeah.
24 hours, the
Yeah.
closed captions
Yeah.
are on the videos, which
Yeah.
help me tremendously.
Tremendously. I
I will
have to
always
wait for
catch,
those.
right, right.
Well, could you put a transcript straight from that?
There is a way to print, it's
Yeah.
called
Always,
something.
Well, I
does it
mean-
translate the
Yeah.
closed captions?
They have
I guess
Super
that's it.
accurate?
I think they have a
Something.
transcript feature
Yeah.
separate from
Look into
the.
that. I would
So-
find that very useful personally.
Yeah, what are our thoughts on representation per each ward?
I did want to mention that too. 'Cause I know we could have up to 5 to 7 members and you had previously mentioned having one representative per ward. So, that's
I mean,
ultimately
to me,
up to
that's,
you.
I think that's kind of up to how the board really, I would think, whether they want to expand that. I mean, I mean,
I'm
it
a big
seems
fan of.
seems to operate pretty well, it seems to operate pretty well with 5 members. And I gotta be honest on this, the Historic Commission is worse, is more difficult. It is sometimes difficult getting everyone to attend meetings. The more people you have, it is just honestly difficult to get a quorum.
Running
We
three
had
meetings, I
to-
can attest to that, it's
Yeah,
very difficult usually. You guys are my easiest, thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
Even though I'm tardy.
Yeah, Target is fine, but just,
We
you
can
know,
handle that.
I don't know how many times we have to reschedule a historic commission meeting because we don't have a quorum.
Well,
So I just, that's, there's.
But on the flip side of that, there's something to be said for spreading around different parts of town, being represented.
Absolutely, yes.
So how do we address that? If we don't want to grow.
Are we assigned, I'm in Ward 6.
Yeah, right now it's just,
That's how it happened, yeah. Anybody else in Ward 6 besides me?
we're 2 Ward 4s, but that won't be a problem.
Okay.
I never think of myself as.
I don't either, I didn't, for sure, some of this on that
But I mean,
map.
it does matter in some circumstances, and I think especially if we're talking about the annex area and all that future growth, and we don't have a Ward 6 or Ward 1, you know, how do we make sure that
There's that, we can operate with that.
that's all, I mean, if we don't want to grow,
Good.
how do we then address getting more equal representation?
Yeah.
I
And
have
then
a
with it,
question for y'all, if you don't mind, since I'm not a member of the board. I own property right down the street, the old Ding Dong School, and Pink House next to it, which when I moved there, I was told, oh, it has to be 10 feet from the property line. And yet, we've got all those new things right down there on Porter, facing the highway, that look like they're about 6 feet apart, and they're all for sale. And I'm thinking, what happened to the zoning laws? Why do we constantly allow people to make changes? Some people can, and some people can't. And is that fair? No, it's not. We should have the same rules for everybody. So why don't we?
I agree with you. I can answer? Mick?
No, I
Please.
mean, really, I was just,
this is about the work session though, right now.
Right.
so-
That's
Yeah, that's
that's
kind of what I was gonna allude to, but.
What you're asking about happens in the planning commission. That's nothing that the zoning board is ever able to determine or have a say in.
Why shouldn't you though?
For the determination of land use and setback is always, it's part of the UDC codes, and that falls under what the planning commission is responsible for. We all have our different parts. All right, so.
We can always do something with the representation in each ward, and then, as you said before, we could also put some stipulations in there about, attendance, and maybe that could help. I know ultimately it's, we call to make sure that, you know, the scheduling.
I mean, if we don't want to grow the
Have
board,
lives,
the
so.
planning commission right now has a clause in theirs about their representation, somebody from each ward, but if that is not the case, don't they have some kind of a footnote or?
It's a should, yes, that, I think was that you, something to the effect of that, you know, if there's not a person available from each ward, the board can choose one. that,
So
you
if
know,
we did that and still want to keep it at 5, we try to first seek out people from different wards, given who all applies for an opening? Is that how that,
Mhm.
what do you
It
all
all
think
depends on
about?
who applies. I mean, I guess it could keep it kind of fuzzy if you like, and, you know, there would be, it should be one person, you know, as diverse across the city as possible. It should be one person per ward as to the maximum extent possible. That way it gives the alderman, it gives them the emphasis that, yeah, it should, the membership should be diverse, recognizing that it a lot depends on who applies.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we
We
don't,
opened it up to applications, we just didn't receive them, so
yeah,
here
we
was our,
sometimes have
you know.
difficulty getting,
That's what I was saying, so you have to have a backup in case you don't get
yeah,
the right amount of
that's
applications.
right.
So just trying to look at the map and think, 5 people, could we say you know, the ideal mix is one member from Ward 1 and 2, one person from Wards 3 and 4, one person from Wards 5 and 6, one person from the downtown overlay, and one person from the newly annexed area. That's 5 people. That ensures that you got kind of a west, a center, and east.
So either one or two,
Downtowns.
either 3 or 4, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Make sure there's
either
one of
or
each of.
two. Either 3 or 4.
You gonna write that?
Either 5 or 6. One person from downtown overlay and one person from newly annexed area is the ideal, because that kind of
That spreads it out.
spreads it out a little bit, and, you know, places extra value on, hey, a lot's happening downtown, we'd really like to have a resident from that area.
And say you didn't have one from Ward 1, then you would have someone from one of the overlay districts, so it's, you know, it's similar
Mhm.
area, yeah.
And then newly annexed area, because that's gonna be
That's interesting.
big going forward, I guess, you know. Just an idea, you know. It's a good idea.
I think so. I'll go with that.
Just trying to
Other than
think.
the only overlays are in Ward 2, so that automatically guarantees a 2, which is fine,
Mhm.
but that's the only place that those exist.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I mean, I say maybe we do,
It's a starting point, you know, may not be the answer, but it's, there's a makeup of 5 people.
That's the newest.
No, that didn't have the,
Doesn't have the top, the north.
didn't have the annex.
Okay.
yeah, sorry, that's something for tonight, it just happens to be in here, so it's something we can look at to kind of get an idea. But yeah, 6 would go all the way up.
Joe, do you want to spend like 3 to 5 minutes?
I could do this
Do you mind?
quick.
Okay.
I'm gonna respectfully disagree with that
Okay.
process.
God bless you.
Yeah.
What that does is it gives the downtown district, which is driving all this development, a voice. And now you're saying 1 and 2 only have one voice, but the downtown district has an entire say on it, and you're dividing up the wards. And so it's preferential treatment, which is where we're at now, why most of the citizens are upset. So I notice there's 7 members on the board, which is what it would be if,
We have 5.
we gotta have 5?
Two
alternates.
staff.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anyway, that's just my opinion.
And I'll say,
Because I'm one of the voices driving representation on all the wards.
Yeah.
Because the ward representatives, when I have an issue with what's going on in Ward 1 and 2,
mhm.
their response is, well, I don't work for you. I work for the residents in my ward, Ward 1 or Ward 5 or whatever. But when they stand up here in a board meeting and vote, they're voting for everybody in the city. So it's unfair to have that sort of division arbitrarily, and I think that now that's just my opinion, and I don't want to offend anybody. I just feel like all the wards, some of the divisiveness that's happened in the last 4 years is underrepresentation, and more the process that the citizens feel they're underrepresented on some of the boards, particularly with the planning board and how that all laid out when they voted for new members. So my opinion, I've been pretty strong on this, is that all the wards should be represented. But that's just my opinion, and y'all may feel different, and that's fine. I'm not gonna be objective to that. I like sort of the idea of having 1 and 2, so if 2 is absent, 1 can represent both of them. But then that means all of the wards have representation. Now, the annexed area is incorporated in not only the 2 specific areas, it changed the ward lines across the city. So having representation for all the wards, I think is a good idea. A combination there, so you can keep it to 5. I wouldn't be objective to that. But having preferential treatment for the downtown district and for the annexed areas is unfair and arbitrary and capricious.
The only reason I, tried to say downtown district was because, what's kind of going on more downtown, commercial development, getting a resident, from the downtown. That was just my thought process behind that,
What's to say we couldn't have one, like you're saying, if we had one that's either 1 or 2, 3 or 4, 5 or 6, and then if we did 2 at large, that could be from anywhere,
But
or.
what if you have, you've got a 1 and 2, a 3 and 4, a 5 and 6. Well, I guess this doesn't really matter in the case of you have limited applicants. Obviously, what if you get, 3 in one ward, because you got 2 at large?
That doesn't work.
Yeah,
If you
I
wanna- without growing it, I'm trying to look at how we can
Yeah,
be more
same.
equitable with it.
You know, from a zoning perspective and our powers, I mean, do the ward lines really matter whether you're in, 5 or 1, with the powers that we have?
You're probably not gonna resolve tonight, but there are
Yeah.
good things to think about.
Mhm.
So I'll go over these real quick.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll just go over them quick. So most of these, like whoever wrote this, I thought did a really good job. It's a great overview. You don't want this thing to be 30 pages long. You want something short, concise, to the point where you can, it's flexible enough for y'all to work with and the public can review and look at it.
What's your name again, sir? We have that.
My name is Joe Jewell.
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 Thank you, Joe.
And I'll volunteer to work with whoever wants to help compile this. Like I said, I've got decades of experience doing these things. And one of the things I noted that wasn't in here that we pretty much essentially ensured that was in all of them was the process to review and update. Like either annually, biannually, or something like that. So y'all have the ability to be flexible if someone notices something or something changes within the city or the regulations, that y'all have the ability to update it at y'all's beck and call. So first few things are a couple grammatical things. In the first sentence, in section 121.1, it refers to, it names this board as the Ocean Springs Zoning and Adjustment
Which
Board.
document are you on? I'm so sorry.
I'm on the rules, I guess, the rules and regulations.
Oh, from,
Actual zoning adjustment board, 1.21.
Oh, that's actually in the UDC.
That's the UDC.
the one Wade sent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that is just that is not like a
So
draft
sorry.
of the bylaws.
Okay, go ahead.
So
This is,
anyway, it is, I guess if you're gonna say Ocean Springs, it should be Ocean Springs ZAB, OSZAB, but you can refer to it in a document as ZAB thereafter.
Mhm.
And then throughout the document, it flips back and forth. The minute you say the zoning and adjustment board and put a parentheses, ZAB, you don't put quotations around ZAB. From there on in the rest of the document, it should be ZAB, but it flips back to spelling out
I
ZAB
see.
several times. And then y'all already discussed this, there's 5 members, there's 3 appointed elected officials, the chairman, vice chairman, and the secretary. It defines the duties of the secretary, but it doesn't define the duties of the chairman and vice chairman. I'll spoke briefly on that. And, each position has this. And then, so this gets into legal aspect of it. In section 1.21.2, it says, the recommendations of this committee will be, whereas in the rest of the document, you said shall, and shall is a legal thing. So wherever there's will or similar statements, it should always be referred to as shall. That should be a search and substitute option real quickly. And then I guess one thing that stood out real quickly was the way this one sentence was written. It says, it will be forwarded to the mayor and board of aldermen for ratification and approval. Well, what if the mayor and board of aldermen decide to alter it, or to send it back to y'all, or to change the language? The way it's written, they only have 2 choices. They gotta ratify and approve it. So I would suggest modifying that language, say something like review and
Modify.
modify, language like that. That gives them flexibility for their actual legal ability to respond to that. And then this is a pretty important one. Legally, there's a definition for the word power and the word authority. Power is a type of authority. Power is usually an enforcement type action, that's with the military or the police. You have the authority to pull someone over and give them a ticket. You have the authority to arrest somebody. That's a power. You're restricting a person or group of people's rights. You tell that person, I'm arresting you for public drunkenness, or I'm giving you a ticket for speeding. That's a power, not an authority. So I would suggest everywhere in here you choose, because it's already sprinkled this power, authority all over. I would suggest that this board is being granted authority by the Board of Aldermen. So I would suggest that you'll change everywhere you see power to authority.
Now, I'll just real quick, this is stuff that's in the UDC, so we don't have the authority to change that. But, you know, all good comments, I guess, for, you know, if we ever do,
Right.
yeah. But I guess it's just knowing anywhere in here where we say, you know, power
Sure.
authority is what's listed in this, just, yeah.
You can
Okay.
say by
Yeah.
by the power of the UDC, which is transferring that authority.
That's true.
It's absolutely, you can say that. And then just small things like, we all know what UDC stands for, but if you're writing a standalone document to conduct how you conduct your business, you need to spell that out the first time before you use the acronym. And then same thing, that it says in section D, it says ZAB has the right. I would say suggest that ZAB has the authority to. So there are a couple instances where there's some vague language used, and it's somebody that's had to testify in a court of law and defend some of the regulations and ordinances and bylaws that were written. When one of the things that caused the biggest debate was vague, with the judge declared vague language. And so in section D, it says, and shall be allowed only for the good and substantial reason. What I think is good and substantial as an applicant may not be what this committee thinks is good and substantial. So that may need to be, what I would do is suggest some different language, and then maybe one of our attorneys would do that.
That's something I think that some of the other cities captured a good job doing, as far as when you make a motion, how to be specific and make sure it's tied directly when you approve something to where in the UDC, you know, which I know as a board, we've been trying to make sure we cover that lately in our motions, but we need to put it in our bylaws. I
And just a
agree.
couple more. So in section 2.16.6, it's on the front hand it says appendix A. And then it references an ordinance. So I was looking for appendix A, because an appendix is always attached to the document.
Right, so this,
And we talked about that,
Yeah.
the Board of Aldermen talked about a way to uniformly adopt that into all of the bylaws. And so the easiest way to do that, rather than attach every regulation or thing that you've referenced, is just say, reference, ordinance, whatever it is, and don't write appendix.
Appendix.
Because appendix means it's here, it's attached, find it attached. I've been where court cases were thrown out because of that simple process. And then I guess finally, I would say in section 216.7, it says approval criteria on historical structures. I think y'all just kind of talked about that. I was unsure where y'all were going with that. And that's if it's substantially modified. And if a building or a place is substantially modified, it removes it from the historic register. The only thing I would say is that, is there a process for y'all to coordinate with the Historic Preservation Committee when those instances happen, rather than make an unilateral decision? So like I say, I would volunteer my time, of course y'all would have to approve that. I would volunteer my time, whoever is ultimately tasked with compiling all of this
The data.
information into a workable document that y'all ultimately review. I'd be more than willing to volunteer my time.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
all right, we have 20 minutes, so,
I have
Okay, so let's.
another general question for, Joe, made me think about the UDC is specific in the technicalities of what 25% and all that kind of stuff is to help me understand the bylaws. We're not going to get into the specifics of the technicalities of, is this general in nature of?
Yeah, this should be looked at as like a supplement to what the UDC has. I mean,
Enhancement.
It can expand on it in terms of making details, more detailed information of how to handle meetings, how to handle information provided by applicants, residents.
Bylaws wouldn't necessarily get into the
Look at the
rules of how much percent this,
Right.
that way.
Right.
The bylaws are the implementation needs for.
it's like our code of conduct more than anything.
Yeah.
So as if the UDC changes, your bylaws don't have to change.
Exactly.
You basically say, here's kind of what we do, and we adhere to, those,
The current version of the EDC.
yeah, those kind of laid out in the UDC. That's our authority.
Yeah, it's not repeating the
Yeah,
UDC.
yeah,
It's,
Exactly.
I just had a comment about the representation of wards. So for example, there's Alderman 6 and they're all labeled, whereas ours is, not, yeah. So is that a way that we can be labeled, if you will, to show the cross,
Yeah, the lineup, yeah.
the lineup, yeah. I'm just asking that question.
You're saying, should we have representation?
Should there be some designation of where you're from or who you represent, or
Right, that's kind of.
some identity of.
How we do that, if we stay at 5, because I think everyone said they are good with 5 versus 7, but we have to keep it on an odd number, but we have 6 wards. So how do we address more equal?
I guess I'm old school. I don't represent my ward. I represent Ocean Springs. I don't really care what Ward 4 does, but, in my viewpoint, but
Yeah, I don't get any input.
yeah.
I think if we could.
You know what I mean?
Right?
That's what he
I did, it got put in the file.
I care about Ward 4.
There, flip that around.
I think if we can include the clause where, depending on the applicants, we would first seek to have equal representation, but after that, it would be, we have to fill seats, kind of the way the planning commission was. Is everyone like that one? If we don't go from 5 to 7, planning
Also
commission.
talking about the identity sitting on the board. So I'm looking here. I know Robert Blackman's Ward 5.
Yeah,
But with 5CU up there,
it just has our name, yeah.
so is there a way of making? I mean,
that's
that's a question.
If we put this clause in here,
Yeah, I mean, you can just order new placards, and we can do that, and just do it by ward. But then if we have, what does it do, 6? If we can
But I
do
can't
6, and we
take
can
it
do
with me.
one for each ward, or do you guys wanna have one representative, at large?
that's what I'm saying. If you did per ward, one would have to be a 7th, one would have to be an at-large
Yeah,
to
that's what I
tie
think,
break.
with 1 through 6, and then one at large.
Yeah, 'cause
That
you'd
would be
have to have
the
the
only
odd
Because if we
number.
do that, that changes your quorum to 4-3 instead of,
Yes, Yes.
3-2, and
yeah.
if we think we're gonna have a staffing issue, let's say we do it and we got an issue staffing or getting applicants for these spots, that could be something like Joe's saying, we review it because we're making the best guess decisions right now, but they may not all pan out the way we thought.
Yeah.
What do you all think about going to 7 then, with an at-large?
I'll agree, I guess somewhat with Wade in that, anytime you add more, that's just,
Right.
that's just one more you need.
I too
to
like
have,
our 5.
I mean, I like
but-
the have a good representation. It's just that the unfortunate matter is that it's very difficult to get people to
I
apply.
understand, to me, I think it's more important to do it for planning commission, because they have so much more authority
They do, yeah.
than what we are granted. I mean, honestly, I
Sure.
don't think in the 6 years I've been here, we've run against a conflict with a historic property. Most of the time, we're here for setbacks. We've had a few things outside of that, not to say it won't ever be, but
Yeah.
that is the 90% of what we do.
Some kind of leftovers, in some
So
respect.
does it warrant it as strongly? I don't know. All right, we're spending a lot of time on this. So right now, let's do 5. Let's stick with 5.
So why does historic have, I'm changing it back to 9
7.
member? This says 9 on here.
They have a 7 plus something, I don't know.
Yeah, but that was just randomly 9, it didn't say.
Yeah, it is.
Who are the 2 alternates?
I don't think we've got them.
I have no idea.
All right, so
Sadly don't.
we talked about the officer positions. We'll keep the 3. For right now, we'll stick with the 5.
And I think,
Stick with
With
5.
a clause
For
about we'll first seek to not duplicate wards, but then
Right.
based on the applications, may be necessary or something like that. What was next? We talked about making the calendar say our terms be July 1 to June 30. So our quorum wouldn't change.
No?
I would like to mention that. I'd like to have reference made to operating by the Robert's Rules of Order. I think that's a
I
good.
think so
I
too.
do too.
Yeah, I think Shannon and I both had that.
Thank you, Chat.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
We can take out my part right now. I'm not so quick to do it, but I know I'm setting a precedence trying to establish a minimum standard. I don't know, we can do it. I've just started, maybe that's something between now and June, if some people want to help me look at different avenues for where we could send people for training, what that would look like.
Oh, I was going to mention that the Planning Association, they typically have videos, training videos.
That's what I was wondering.
Yes, they do.
And we're talking like if you watch 1 or 2 hours of videos a year, it's not anything.
What I've done in the past in Germantown was to just have they start the meeting half hour early or some other time, and they rent the video from APA, run it on the TV screen, and just everyone sits there and absorbs it, makes notes about how it's things like how to run a meeting, how to deal with how to make their meetings run efficiently. things
Difficult
of that
situation,
sort.
yeah.
How to operate them and take testimony and evidence
think
and
that's
so
great.
forth. Yeah.
Great idea.
I also would like to find more planning zoning specific things like land use zoning. Which I'm currently, so if anybody wants to help me, if we could find just a couple avenues to present to back up why we want to do this. Because I don't know how, that sounds simple, but
Yeah.
I don't want it to be burdensome or
Right,
super
it's,
costly. It's the first thing out the gate. We're trying to,
It's not too expensive to rent the video. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an online thing, obviously.
I looked a little bit on the planning, but I didn't go too far on their website.
Yeah, I think you might have to actually have a do you have are you a member of APA? Okay, yeah, then if you're a member, then you can
Yeah.
probably get access to most of the
I
things.
just got to spend more time on it.
Yeah, it just takes a while.
I will come back in June or whenever we work on this next with some avenues.
We don't have anything filed for June, so we could do another work session.
Let's do that then.
Well, here you go. So these cannot be.
So I can bring avenues for ideas for if we want to make it based on a minimum 1 to 3 hours a year. If you've got to spend your time going to one of these sources and just watching video, doing an online workshop. I think if we can start it, maybe some of the other boards can adopt it.
Make it more professional, we'll say that.
They're very helpful. The ones
Yeah, yeah.
that I ran for the planning commission and the Germantown zoning board, they were informative things. So Tennessee law requires a minimum number of hours per
Right.
year for staff and planning commission members.
There are a lot of municipalities I found that are.
Yeah.
None around here, and we could be
Those are.
cutting edge.
Or certified by the planning.
Different states, I want to say Alabama has an actual certificate you can get for planning and zoning boards, officials. Kind of neat. So really quickly, we've got, 10 minutes?
About 5
So-
minutes.
5
5
minutes.
minutes to reset.
Question really
So
quick.
here's what I'm gonna do. Yeah, here's what I'm gonna do. If you get with this, do you have this in a Word format?
Yes.
Okay. If you can send this to me in a Word format, I will take this and incorporate these two, because I just think, from a formatting standpoint, if we stick with something similar, maybe we.
You're talking about
grab
basing it off of,
Article 1, Article 2.
HPCs?
Yeah,
Okay.
just kind of their article outlines. And kind of fold these into there. That way we've got one document for
Okay.
everybody to look at,
Yeah.
comment on,
cool.
I agree.
and do that. And then just.
We've
review
kind
it
of whittled
back
this
out.
down a little bit more.
Yeah.
so
And then
email it as soon as you get it done.
Yeah.
I'll start sending out, if I can find sources for continuing it on a basic level.
Maybe like a Las Vegas word for
Exactly.
They'll be knocking on the door to apply for zoning.
In a serious note, since you mentioned that, the Mississippi's APA conference is going to be in Hattiesburg in October this year.
Really?
Now, they typically don't have a lot specifically aimed at zoning variances and zoning boards, but it's close by and
You
something.
said October?
Yeah, it's usually
I'm
October.
gonna check the website,
Yeah,
okay?
check it out. I got an email
San
about
If I find it, I'll send it or
it.
something.
Yeah.
Send it to everybody, please.
What good does it do for y'all to make plans and have laws and requirements if the alderman can vote and just do away with it?
Because as a board, I think all boards need to have a bylaws, and we don't have any established yet. And it's just the code of how we're gonna operate as a board, which shouldn't be affected by another board's action.
Well, you're right, the planning board has been
Yeah.
the mainstay of this whole city.
All right, so Nick is gonna start working on a draft. I'll look at CEUs. Mike, what are you doing?
I'm listening. I'll do whatever needs
What
to
you
be
want?
done.
Yeah.
John?
I'll
You gonna
send
work
out,
on-
hopefully this week.
Yeah.
Is my goal. If you can.
Anything?
give me the word, Bob.
I'm with
Yeah.
you.
I'll try to do it for you.
You got anything? Don?
It's on his list,
Not,
so.
not at the moment, I mean, certainly, if you want to,
That's
if you have something going, give me notice and I'll,
We're gonna have a work session the same meeting time next month, since we don't
Which
have
means forget about it.
good to go.
second Wednesday, second Tuesday, not Wednesday. Thank you.
Available in between, you know.
Check your email, because we're gonna start sending stuff out to
That's right.
continue working.
Okay?
All right, well,
Does everyone have access to their city email?
Yeah.
Do you figure that out?
Looking at you, John O'Hara.
You wanna come see me sometime this week or next week and we can figure that out?
When are you in the office?
Every day.
Okay.
Monday through Friday.
Over here?
Yes, sir,
Yeah,
upstairs,
okay.
above
Upstairs?
that building.
I'll come see you.
Come see me and we can get this done in about a half hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Awesome.
About time.
Yeah, well, yes. No, that's okay.
Hannah and Wade.
thank y'all very much for
You're welcome. All right, good meeting, guys.
taking this thing on.
Go team.
Which phone number?
I'm gonna keep this.
What's your phone number?
Thank you.
720
That's pretty nice.
292 0062.
Right here.